Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer quick match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as Brettonia against the Vampire Counts led by Jake Hunter 52 on the map Altdorf Outskirts. So, going right in spite of the nerf to the Enchantress, I was very tempted to run her this game because I really wanted to attempt to make good use of the Dwellers Below because of the recent buff the buff they got amongst other spells in this last batch. But I decided to go with the safer route, go with King Lewin, who's still an absolute close quarters and just an absolute champ on the Beacus, of course. So he is coming in with all of his abilities. I even brought in the what is his ability? The Lion's Shield, which improves his magic resistance. I was a little worried about Fate of Buna or that sort of stuff, so I figured why not? Might as well bring it. It's not that expensive. He's backed up by a Lore of Life Damsel on a unicorn, and so she is very mobile, and I definitely want that mobility because I want to be keeping her alive, making sure that I can cast that with Dwellers Below and Earth Blood, both of which I brought along, and of course Life Bloom. So she's healing everything when she's casting. And both of those spells, especially Dwellers Below, have quite a long wind-up, so they should be healing for quite a bit. Or she should get some healing out of that. Then my front line is a mix of Battle Pilgrims alternating with Foot Squires all of the way down, and then finally on the right-hand side we have the Beast Slayers of Bastogne, who are the regiment around Foot Squires with the pole arms, and as you can see they're looking absolutely awesome here with their shields and their full helmets and all that sort of stuff, and then the Holy Wardens of My Sotal with their glow-in-the-dark lightsaber weapons here, and absolutely crazy fancy. Then, of course, still mandatory even with post-nerf in my opinion, the Cradle Relique, which comes in and gives me a 12 leadership boost and then immunity to psychology that I so desperately want as Brettonia, and then 2 units of Questing Knights, 1 on each side. I didn't have the money for the higher-end Brettonian Knight Regiment of Renown or any of that sort of stuff, and I figured 2 Questing Knights would still do fairly well, especially backed by Lore of Life. So I'm really pushing Lewin forward to do a little bit of early game scouting, and my opponent's army is definitely something very similar to what I would run if I was playing as Vampire Counts against Brettonia. So I was definitely not happy about that because I do think it's a pretty powerful build against Brettonia. I was a little worried. So my opponent, of course, running Kemmler over here, no Dance Macabre, just and no Cloak of Mist and Shadows, which is a little surprising, but he did bring Chaos Tomb Blade and, of course, Invocation of the Heck and Raise Dead. Coming alongside 2 White Kings, spread out to the flanks, and they did actually drop Furious Onslaught and but they have another ability that improves their damage, and they actually don't have either of those, just Foe Seeker. And then in the center, of course, Corpse Guard with an Unholy Lodestone, just a very powerful tool to boost your units' combat stats, that provides regen, all that sort of stuff. Then the front line to the Tithe and the unit of zombies all the way up to the front, dirt cheap, kind of absorbed my fire, because I did bring 2 units of fire. Actually, I think I forgot to mention those, the 2 units of Peasant Bowmen with fire arrows, so they're definitely there to shut down any regening units and provide me with some cheap range support. And my opponent going very wide here. Tithe, a whole line of Graveguard. Now, Graveguard, while being very strong as Brettonia, are very, very cheap. And as you can see, my opponent does get, I do believe it's 5 units of Graveguard out here in the front. Or, never mind, 4 units of Graveguard. But they're very cheap, so you can field a lot of them. Yes, I do believe 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Skeleton Spears, 2 units of Crypt Horrors, and a Blood Knight. So he went very wide, and the Undead has some very, very cheap unit options, and they're definitely maximizing the value here. And out on the flank, which I didn't actually notice until much later, these Dire Wolves over here, and they're definitely waiting to snack on my Peasant Bows. Now what I'm doing over here, I'm moving up my force a little bit. I'm trying to get into position where I'm kind of shielded by this barn or farm or whatever it is. And that way I can kind of hold, I can make sure I don't get flanked. And that is a huge issue. That's something you always want to look out for when you're playing against a wider army than yours, is try to find places where you can, that can serve as a sort of linchpin that you can avoid getting encircled with. Because especially slow undead, it's going to take them a while to get around this farm and get into the back of my infantry. Battle Pilgrims, of course, will trade pretty effectively against the squishy targets, but they will not do well against Graveyard, and honestly, I'm not sure how well the Beast Slayers of Bastogne will do against Graveyard. I don't even think generic Foot Squires do that great against Graveguard. On the other end, the Beast Slayers of Bastogne do have quite a bit of melee defense, 53, which do well against the Graveguard's low melee defense. Now here's where I'm going for definitely something a little cheeky, definitely something a little cheesy. As you can see, I'm doing this very greedy play here with Lewin, and I'm hoping to bait my opponent. I'm hoping he hasn't realized how strong the new Dwellers from Below is. And as you can see, the moment King Lewin goes, my opponent thinks he's getting himself an easy meal here, flooding him with all his units, just go in for the surround on Lewin. Here, there goes the alert. Lewin's being encircled, and here come the Dwellers from Below, and immediately you can see that ridiculous damage they're doing. They're just tearing through my opponent's units. My opponent did catch on, but not in time These Blood Knights just lost a massive chunk of their HP. They're being forced. These Graveguard lost over almost half their models. Lewin's barely scratched, and Lewin's just like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. He's kind of taking his time to get the charge into the corpse cart, and the rest of my army is just piling on here to take advantage of that disruption in my opponent's forces. Now, fire arrows coming in on the corpse cart. I did make sure to put these guys on hard and stand your ground, or on a guard mode, and manual fire. And these crypt horrors getting in the way of those fire arrows, eating shots that were meant for the corpse cart with unholy loads, and just everything going wrong there for my opponent. And of course now the Sword of Corona is going to go down pretty shortly. Foe Seeker, Stand Your Ground, Deadly Onslaught, all those abilities going in. My opponent's units are all piled in here in the middle, surrounding Lewin, and Lewin's just in the thick of it. I'm not doing any fancy cycle charging, none of that sort of stuff. Crypt horrors are just getting annihilated. Beast Slayers of Bastone in there. The Grail Rake still keeping this line nice and tight, and these Questing Knights are working their way around the flanks. Over here on the right flank, in the meantime, my opponent did try to push out with Direwolves, got intercepted by the Questing Knights, and now they're getting annihilated. They have absolutely no way to beat these Questing Knights who have a lot of armor. Well, not a lot of armor, but good, more than enough armor to deflect most of what the Direwolves can throw at them. The fire arrows just coming in hot and heavy. My opponent does cost to cast Invocation of the Heck here, and it heals his units a little bit, but it's nowhere near enough to compensate. Now these Holy Wardens, Holy Wardens are very powerful against undead, because lack of shields doesn't matter, and their damage output is just so insane. They're a very high DPS unit, and I'm going to be able to, now I do pull them back a little bit, and hopefully I'll be able to get them in shortly. Second Fellowship Below. It's a cheap spell, it's only 17 points of magic, and as you can see, it's just destroying these units. Blood Knights, even Blood Knights getting torn apart, much like the Skeleton Spears. We're losing like multiple models on every tick of damage. An entire block of infantry, like about 4 units, that just got completely annihilated. Either to a man or almost a man. Now, Lewin going after Kemmler. Now, Krell in a move that I definitely like to do myself sometimes. Dropping Krell behind my lines, going after the Grail Rake, trying to pressure it, but it's a little too late. At this point, if I lost the Grail Rake, it wouldn't matter, even though these Vikings in there and trying to disrupt. So it just doesn't matter. Beast Slayers tanking it out, doing an absolutely awesome job. Holy Wardens coming in from the flank. Questing Knights coming back in. I did forget about him after dealing with those Dire Wolves. Archers actually stopped firing. Once again, I put them on guard and hold fire, so I actually forgot about him. I'm only now opening fire on Krell. But now my opponent's army is completely disintegrating. Kemmler died to King Lewin. And now it's fire, and soon to be Lewin against the Krell. I do pop another Earthblood. At this point, it's just kind of like I don't want to lose any units if I can avoid it. And going after Krell with Lewin. So Krell is not, without unsupported, Krell's not the best hero killer. His melee attack is fairly low. Given that Lewin's melee defense, especially standing your ground, is still well over 70. These zombies are also, they're disintegrating slowly but surely because there are some units. Not yet, not quite yet. Questing Knights doing some work, just beating him down slowly but surely. Now I'm throwing the Holy Wardens with my Centel. My opponent actually decided not to just leave the game, so I didn't get the win right here and there, to concede defeat. So I didn't get the win right here and there, and so I was forced to kind of wipe these units out. Holy Wardens over here, though, you can see how fast they shred through zombies. Such a powerful unit against squishy units. They're very, very strong. They're like, I'm trying to think of a unit. They're like Savage Orcs on crack, is what they are. Very, very strong. And that's the end of the replay now. I think the lesson of this replay is, and I think this is such a powerful spell against. So, the classic strong position for undead is to be able to blob, because you can get massive value out of Invocation from the Heck. And make sure your leadership doesn't suffer too much because you're near your lords and that sort of stuff, which is normally a problem for undead. And you can make massive use of those things like Unholy Lodestone and kind of just bust through an enemy's line and push onward, and it's incredibly powerful for them to blob. The Dwellers Below completely shut that down, and we saw that. You can definitely see that in this game. Now, the Names of Life only got 2 kills on paper. In practice, those Dwellers Below probably got, I'd assume, well over 100, possibly closer to like 200 kills between the 2 casts. And it's a cheap spell, unlike Wind of Death or Overcast Foot of Gork and Overcast Pit of Shades or Overcast Final Transmutation, all of which cost well into the 20s. Like Foot of Gork is 28, I do believe. Same with Wind of Death, 26 on Final Transmutation. It's very mana or Winds of Magic inefficient spells, or no, they're efficient, but they're just very expensive spells. So you're not going to get many casts of anything else. But it's only 17. It's barely more expensive than Fate of Buna, which is 16 for Dwellers Below. And if you can pin your enemies down in a certain spot, get them to blob. Especially this works especially well against the Eye, which is much worse at disengaging than my opponent here was. It's an incredibly powerful spell. It can just annihilate your enemies. And you still have more than enough mana, or more than enough wins, to get get a Earthblood off. You can almost get an Earthblood, and for a single win of death, the cost of a single win of death, you can get an Earthblood and a Dwellers Below off almost. I think that just really shows how cheap and cost effective that is. I was able to get 2 off that game. I don't think I've ever been able to get off 2 wins of death ever in a game before of quick match. So that's huge. Now, of course, some of my units did perform pretty well as well, so I'll go over that real quickly. I don't think there's that much to cover. Lowen did some work. He just dove in and was my bait. Questing Knights, one of them did well. They tore up those flanking dire wolves. The other one did even better because they got into the rear of those skeleton infantry, and they definitely laid the smackdown, laid the law down on those Graveguard and skeleton spears. So they're definitely good. And then, of course, the Holy Wardens of Mycental, and even basically there's a best one. I haven't been hearing the best of things about them, but they did pretty well. Battle Pilgrims versus Graveguard is an ideal situation. I'm not entirely sure why these guys got so little damage done. I don't know if they got stuck fighting. I don't know. I honestly don't know why they did so poorly. Damage or kill wise, they might have just not been in a correct position to really. They might have been getting blocked by another unit or something like that. Peasant Bowmen. Actually, one of them gained a chevron, but even ignoring the chevrons, they did huge work. Tore through the Cryptors, tore through the Ghost Guard with Unholy Loads, and those were very high priority targets, and very much worth the cost. The peasants were very strong. Those nerfs to Raise Dead have been very powerful. I made sure to push. It's very important now, even more now than before, really, because you can. Now, zombies before Raise Dead was only 60-meter distance. So with a Flying Lord, you can easily get it off. But if your Lord is entangled in frontline combat, if you're running Vlad, if you're running Kemmler, you can't really get a cast off on your enemy's archers. If your enemy's good about placing their archers far enough from the front line, you can't shut them down as effectively. So my archers were pretty far out of the way. They were fairly well shielded, and you can't just chain cast off multiple zombies. So it's getting good value out of it there. This is mostly just to showcase Dwellers Below. Be very careful now. If you see a Lore of Life spellcaster, you need to be very cautious. It's not just healing issues, it's or having to punch through healing, it's also having to deal with this sort of counter to blobbing. You want to go wide, you want to spread out, you don't want to get baited into these terrifying situations where you get baited around the Lord and then just get nuked down with a Dwellers Below. It is a very cheap spell. If it takes out a chunk of your front line, it's not efficient, because if it say hits like one unit of Graveguard or something, it's sucking it out. It's not worth it. Plus it'll do some friendly, I do believe it does friendly fire, but against anything else, it's just brutal. So be very careful about that. Be very cautious about these new spells, the new reworked spells. Don't let your enemy get satisfaction like I got here. Nonetheless, good game to my opponent, Jake Hunter, 52. He was definitely on top of cycling through. I definitely think his comp was good. Just gotta watch out a little bit more for those AoE spells. But other than that, good game to my opponent. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was mostly meant just as a sort of warning or an advice video to watch out for these sorts of AoEs, as well as how to abuse them by forcing your opponent to clump up around a hero or that sort of thing. So I definitely hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like or subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any ideas on how I can improve my videos, or any questions about Quick Match, any questions about this match in particular, any ideas on comps or units you'd like to see demonstrated, be sure to post those in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. And try to get the comp up or whatever, and try to demonstrate some uses and whatever unit is asked about or that sort of stuff. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and Wyvern out.